Get that black waitress out of my way before I ruin her night. The words cracked across the grand ballroom like glass under pressure, sharp enough to silence 36 conversations at once. Heads turned. Forks paused midair. Crystal chandeliers shimmered above polished marble floors while a string quartet kept playing as if money could drown out shame. Naomi Brooks stood beside a silver service cart, one hand resting on a tray of untouched champagne, the other still gripping the handle of a linen closet door she had quietly closed seconds earlier. Behind that door, hidden between stacked towels and fresh robes, a young woman was trying not to sob loud enough to be heard. Naomi's pulse hammered against her throat, but her face did not move. Richard Whitmore, chairman of Whitmore Dynamics, stepped closer in his midnight blue tuxedo, jaw tight, smile thin, the kind of smile used by men who never expected resistance. At 58, Richard carried power the way some men carried cologne, thick, expensive, impossible to ignore. His company was about to finalize a merger worth hundreds of millions by breakfast, and tonight's private reception at the Sterling Grand Hotel was meant to celebrate before the ink dried. Every senator's nephew, every consultant with slick hair, every board member with polished teeth seemed to orbit him like obedient moons. Naomi was not part of that world. She was the late-shift waitress with sensible shoes, neat braids pinned back, and a name tag that no one important ever bothered to read. But she had heard the crying. She had followed it past the ice machine, through the service hallway that smelled of detergent and steam, until she found a blonde woman crouched on the floor, clutching a flash drive with shaking fingers. "Please," the woman had whispered, "don't let him see me." Naomi hadn't asked who him was. She already knew. Now Richard's eyes slid to the closet handle behind Naomi. "Move," he said quietly, which somehow felt colder than yelling. The room around them held its breath. Naomi could hear the low hum of refrigeration from the nearby kitchen, the distant elevator bell, the rustle of silk gowns shifting as guests pretended not to stare. She thought of her mother at home, counting insulin pens on the kitchen table. She thought of rent due Friday. She thought of every time people had mistaken silence for weakness. "Sir," she said, voice level, "that area is for staff only." A few people chuckled, relieved someone had made it amusing. Richard did not laugh. "Do you know who you're speaking to?" he asked. Naomi met his eyes for the first time. They were pale and practiced and deeply annoyed. "Yes, sir," she said. "Do you know who you're speaking to?" The nearest board member nearly dropped his drink. Someone coughed into a napkin. Richard's smile vanished completely. For a moment, the orchestra seemed to fade under the weight of what had just happened. Naomi could feel fear moving through her body like cold water, but fear was not the same thing as surrender. Richard leaned in half an inch. "You are a waitress," he said. "Tonight, that means you carry trays, not opinions." Naomi glanced at the service cart, then back at him. "Tonight," she replied softly, "it means I know who came in crying." The sentence landed harder than shouting ever could. Richard's expression flickered, small, quick, but real. There it was. Recognition, concern, maybe even panic. He straightened at once and adjusted his cufflinks, recovering the polished mask that had made him rich. "Security," he called without raising his voice. 2 hotel guards appeared from the far hallway, their shoes clicking across marble. Naomi heard movement behind the closet door, a muffled breath, then stillness. She stepped half an inch sideways, enough to block the handle with her shoulder. "Miss Brooks," said one guard, reading her badge as if surprised it had words on it, "please come with us." Richard smoothed his lapel and turned back toward his guests. "Apologies," he announced, smiling again. "Minor staffing confusion." Laughter returned in nervous little bursts. Glasses clinked. The quartet found its melody. But several board members were no longer watching Richard. They were watching Naomi. She stood alone beside the closed door, posture straight, hands steady, eyes calm in a room built to intimidate people like her. One of the older directors, Arthur Bell, frowned slightly as if a math problem had changed in front of him. Naomi looked at the guards, then at Richard, then at the ballroom full of people trained to ignore what made them uncomfortable. "I'll go," she said. "But if that door opens, everyone in this room deserves to know why she's hiding." The room froze all over again. Richard Whitmore stopped walking. Slowly, very slowly, he turned back around. Richard Whitmore said nothing for 3 full seconds, and in a room like that, 3 seconds felt like thunder. The smile he wore for cameras had gone still at the edges. His guests noticed. Wealthy people often pretended not to see discomfort, but they always recognized danger. Naomi Brooks remained beside the closet door, shoulders square, the white cuff of her uniform crisp against dark wood paneling. The two security guards waited for instruction, uncertain now. Richard finally gave them a small wave. "Not here," he said. "Take her downstairs." His tone was calm again, polished, expensive, but the calm had seams in it. Naomi stepped away from the door only after making sure her body blocked the handle until the last possible second. She walked with the guards through the ballroom, while whispers rose behind crystal glasses like steam. Some guests looked amused. Some looked curious. A few looked embarrassed. Arthur Bell, the oldest member of the board, watched her go with narrowed eyes. He had built factories before Richard was out of college, and he trusted silence less than most men trusted shouting. The service elevator doors opened with a soft bell. Stainless steel walls replaced gold trim and candlelight. The scent of perfume gave way to bleach, coffee grounds, and warm bread from the late kitchen shift. One guard, a broad man named Luis, pressed the lobby button and glanced at Naomi through the mirrored panel. "You should have just moved," he said quietly. Naomi kept her eyes forward. "Maybe." The younger guard, Tara, folded her arms. "Who was in that closet?" Naomi answered without looking at her. "Someone scared enough to hide at a party full of millionaires." No one spoke after that. On the ground floor, they led her to a small security office near the loading dock. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A wall monitor showed grainy camera feeds of hallways, elevators, kitchens, and valet lanes shining wet from recent rain. Naomi sat in a metal chair and folded her hands in her lap. Her pulse was finally slowing, though not by much. She knew exactly what she had risked. One complaint from Richard Whitmore could end her job before sunrise. The manager on duty, Denise Harper, arrived 5 minutes later in a charcoal blazer and practical heels, carrying the tired expression of a woman who solved other people's problems for a living. "Naomi," she said, stopping in the doorway. "Please tell me you did not challenge the host of the largest event this hotel has seen all quarter." Naomi gave a faint smile. "Depends how you define challenge." Denise did not smile back. She dismissed the guards and closed the door. "What happened upstairs?" Naomi hesitated. "The closet. The crying woman. The flash drive." Richard's face when she mentioned it. She chose her words carefully. A guest needed help. Denise exhaled through her nose. "And was this guest on the invitation list?" "I do not think so." Denise paced once across the room, heels tapping in short, frustrated beats. "You are one of the best servers I have, Naomi. You are early, reliable, and somehow polite to people who do not deserve it. Why tonight?" Naomi looked at the floor for a moment, then up again. "Because some nights ask a question. If you answer wrong, it stays with you." Denise stopped pacing. Something in her face softened, but only slightly. "You talk like your grandmother." Naomi blinked. "You remember her? She used to clean rooms here on weekends. She once told a senator to wipe his own spill." That almost made Naomi laugh. Almost. A knock sounded at the door. Tara stepped in holding a folded navy coat. "Found this in the service hallway," she said. Someone dropped it. Naomi recognized it instantly. It belonged to the woman in the closet. Tara lowered her voice. "Also, camera 12 went dark for 6 minutes near the spa corridor." Denise took the coat and stared at it. Fine fabric. Designer label. Not the kind of thing. Forgotten by staff. "Whoever she is," Denise murmured. She was not hiding for fun. Upstairs, somewhere beyond steel beams and chandeliers, music resumed. On the monitor, Naomi saw ballroom guests laughing again, but the camera caught something else too. Richard Whitmore standing apart from the crowd, speaking sharply into his phone near a pillar, jaw tight, eyes scanning the room. He was looking for something he had not found. Denise followed Naomi's gaze to the screen. "That man does not look inconvenienced," she said quietly. "He looks worried." Naomi nodded once. "He should." Denise turned back to her. "If I let you walk out right now, do you go home?" Naomi thought of rent, insulin, and exhaustion. Then she thought of the trembling hand clutching a flash drive. "No," she said. "I go back upstairs." Denise studied her for a long moment, then placed the navy coat on the desk. "You have 10 minutes before I decide." I never heard that answer. Naomi stood. Tara handed her a keycard. "Service stairwell access only," she said. Camera 12 might stay broken a little longer. Naomi took the card, heart beating faster again. As she opened the door, the lobby monitor flickered to the ballroom feed. Richard Whitmore had stopped talking. He was staring directly into the camera, as if somehow he knew she was still in the building. The service stairwell smelled of concrete dust and lemon cleaner, the kind of scent that belonged to places guests never imagined existed. Naomi Brooks climbed quickly, flats whispering against metal steps. Denise's borrowed keycard warm in her palm. Floor numbers passed in red paint. 10, 11, 12. By the time she reached 14, her breathing had deepened, but her mind had become strangely calm. Fear often burned hottest at the beginning. After that, there was only movement. She pushed through the heavy door into a narrow hallway behind the spa suites where wall sconces cast soft gold circles across cream wallpaper. Somewhere beyond the corridor, laughter drifted from the ballroom above, thin and distant now. Naomi moved past carts stacked with towels until she reached the linen closet she had used earlier. The handle was slightly ajar. Her chest tightened. She opened it carefully. Empty shelves. Folded sheets. No woman. No flash drive. Only the faint scent of expensive perfume and panic left behind. She is not there. Naomi spun at the voice. Tara stood at the far end of the hallway, one hand on her radio, the other holding 2 paper cups. Relax, she said, walking closer. If I were here to arrest you, I would have brought less coffee. She handed 1 cup over. Naomi accepted it with both hands, grateful for the heat. Where did she go? Tara glanced toward the camera dome above the ceiling corner. Camera 12 went dark for 6 minutes, remember? During those 6 minutes, a blonde woman in heels and someone wearing a hotel laundry coat used the service elevator to level 22. Naomi stared. Someone helped her. Tara lifted one shoulder. Hotels are full of people who know how to look away. Sometimes that works in your favor. Naomi took a sip. Bitter coffee. Too hot. Perfect. Level 22 is conference suites, she said. Tara nodded. And private executive rooms. Naomi's mind moved fast now. If the woman had gone up, she had not run. She had repositioned. What is your name? Tara asked suddenly. Naomi blinked. You escorted me downstairs an hour ago. I know. But downstairs, you were a problem. Up here, you look more like a plan. Naomi almost smiled. Naomi. Tara extended a hand. Tara. They shook once, quick and practical. A chime sounded from Tara's radio. She listened, then cursed softly under her breath. Richard just canceled dessert service and requested all board members in the executive lounge at 8 sharp. Move the meeting up from tomorrow morning. Naomi checked the hallway clock. 7:18 p.m., why move it? Tara's expression darkened. Because men like him speed up the vote when they feel something slipping. Naomi looked toward the elevator bank. 22 floors above the city, behind smoked glass and leather chairs, Richard Whitmore was trying to close a deal before Truth could catch up. Then we need her before 8. They moved fast. Tara used her badge to access the restricted elevator. Inside, brushed steel walls reflected 2 women who did not. Looked like heroes. One wore security black. One wore a server's uniform with a wrinkle near the collar. Both looked tired. The elevator rose with a smooth mechanical hum. 15, 16, 17. Naomi felt each number like a countdown. You do this often? Tara asked. Defy wealthy men in tailored suits. Only on weekdays, Naomi replied. Tara laughed once, surprised by it. The doors opened on 22. Silence waited outside. Thick carpet muted every step. Hallway art cost more than Naomi's yearly rent. Frosted glass doors lined the corridor with discreet brass plaques. Hudson, Lexington, Madison. At the far end stood one final suite with no plaque at all. 2 men in dark jackets guarded it. Neither wore hotel insignia. Naomi and Tara ducked behind a decorative column. Private security, Tara whispered. Not ours. Naomi's eyes moved to a room service tray abandoned near the wall. 2 untouched salads. A silver dome. Water pitchers sweating onto linen. Can you distract them? Naomi asked. Tara looked offended. I am security. Distracting people is 90% of my profession. She straightened her jacket and strode forward with purposeful annoyance. Gentlemen, fire code inspection. Need this corridor cleared. They protested instantly. Voices rose. Hands pointed. While attention shifted, Naomi slipped low and quick to the room service tray, lifted the silver dome, and rolled it gently down the hall. It clattered against the baseboard like a cymbal in church. Both guards turned at the noise. Naomi used the moment to slide through a side service door left unlatched beside the unmarked suite. Darkness. Narrow pantry shelves. Mini fridge hum. She held still, listening. Through the inner wall came muffled voices. One was male, smooth and irritated. Richard. The other was trembling, female, trying to stay steady. "You are making this harder than it needs to be," Richard said. Naomi's pulse surged. She moved closer until she found the pantry pass-through, cracked 1 inch open. Through it she saw the private suite, leather sofa, skyline windows, a lamp glowing amber beside crystal decanters. And seated in a chair near the window, wrists clenched around a flash drive like a lifeline, was the blonde woman from the closet. Lily Carter. Her eyes were red, but no longer helpless. They were deciding. Naomi held her breath and listened through the narrow pantry opening while the city glowed beyond the glass like a field of cold stars. Richard Whitmore stood near the bar cart with one hand in his pocket, posture relaxed, voice measured, every inch the man who believed rooms belonged to him. Lily Carter sat in a low leather chair across from him, shoulders tense, fingers wrapped around the flash drive so tightly her knuckles had turned pale. A silk lamp cast warm light over the scene, but nothing in the room felt warm. "You are talented, Lily," Richard said, pouring sparkling water into a crystal tumbler. "You always were. That is why I hired you. That is why I promoted you. And that is why I am giving you one last chance to be practical." Lily did not take the drink he offered. "Practical," she repeated, voice hoarse. "You mean quiet." Richard set the glass down untouched. "I mean realistic. Tomorrow morning this merger closes. Thousands of jobs remain secure. Shareholders are protected. Markets stay calm. You release one emotional misunderstanding, and all of that burns because you wanted to feel morally pure for 10 minutes. Naomi watched Lily's jaw tighten. She had heard men like him before. Men who dressed selfishness in the language of responsibility. "You asked me to alter the compliance reports," Lily said. "You moved debt into shell vendors. You hid exposure from the board." Richard gave a small sigh, almost bored. Accounting timing. Common strategy. It was fraud. It was leadership. The words landed flat and polished. Naomi felt anger rise, but she stayed still. Lily's eyes flicked toward the window, then back. "I recorded everything." Richard smiled faintly. "Then you made yourself part of it." Silence stretched. The mini fridge hummed behind Naomi. Somewhere down the hall, Tara's voice still carried in clipped professional tones, keeping the guards occupied. Richard stepped closer to Lily, not threatening, not loud, somehow worse because of it. "Listen carefully. If that drive reaches the board, they will not call you brave. They will call you unstable, compromised, vindictive. They will ask why you stayed so long, why you accepted bonuses, why you attended meetings and smiled in photographs. They will protect themselves first. They always do." Lily's eyes watered, but she did not look down. "Maybe." Richard nodded as if pleased by her honesty. "Good. Then you understand. Give me the drive. Walk away with a recommendation letter, 6-month severance, and your future intact." Naomi saw Lily's hand tremble. Fear was real. Rent was real. Student loans were real. Powerful men often counted on that math. Naomi pushed the pantry door wider by an inch and made the smallest sound she could manage, a soft tap of fingernail on metal shelf. Lily's gaze snapped sideways. She could not see Naomi clearly, only movement and shadow, but recognition flickered across her face. She was not alone. Richard noticed the shift. He turned halfway. What was that? Naomi moved before thinking herself out of it. She stepped through the pantry door carrying a folded white towel over one arm like she belonged there. "Evening service, sir," she said evenly. Richard stared at her as if seeing a ghost in uniform. "You again." Naomi walked to the side table and set down the towel with careful precision. "Manager asked me to replace the glassware." Richard's eyes hardened. "Get out." "In a moment, sir." She turned to Lily. "Ma'am, would you like fresh water?" It was a ridiculous question, and everyone knew it. But Lily understood. She rose slowly from the chair. "Yes," she said. "Please." Naomi crossed to her with the towel draped between them. Beneath the cloth, her hand opened. Lily slid the flash drive into Naomi's palm in one quick practiced motion, hidden by linen and nerve. Richard took one step forward. What did you just hand her? Naomi folded the towel neatly, drive concealed inside. Nothing, sir. Just courtesy. He looked from one woman to the other, calculation racing behind his eyes. Security, he called sharply toward the hall. Tara appeared at the doorway first, breathing steady, expression unreadable. The two private guards followed a second later, annoyed and confused. Richard pointed at Naomi. Search her. Tara did not move. On what basis? On the basis that I requested it. You are not hotel security, Tara replied. You are a guest. For the first time all night, Richard looked genuinely rattled. Naomi felt the room shift with it. Lily stood straighter now. Tell them, Naomi said softly without looking at her. Lily swallowed. He asked me to falsify reports and destroy emails. The private guards exchanged a glance. They had signed up for escort duty, not scandals. Richard laughed once, too quickly. This is absurd. Naomi met his eyes. Then let the board decide. Richard's face changed. Not rage. Not fear. Something colder. Urgency. He checked his watch. 7:46 p.m., the board is already assembling, he said. And by the time anyone hears your little story, the vote will be done. Naomi tightened her grip on the towel. Tara stepped aside toward the hallway. Then we should not waste another second. Richard moved toward the door to block them. But before he could speak, the suite television mounted above the bar flickered on by itself. A live internal channel displayed the executive lounge downstairs. Board members were already taking their seats. At the center of the long table sat Arthur Bell, adjusting his glasses, looking directly into the camera as if waiting for someone specific to arrive. The hallway outside the private suite erupted into motion. Tara was already moving, one hand on the elevator call button, the other holding the corridor clear. Lily Carter stepped out first, shoulders tight, but chin lifted higher than before. Naomi followed with the folded towel tucked under her arm, the hidden flash drive pressing against her wrist like a pulse of its own. Richard Whitmore came last, fast and composed. The mask back on so smoothly, it would have fooled anyone who had not seen the crack beneath it. This ends now, he said, voice low enough for only them to hear. You are making a career mistake, Lily. Lily did not turn around. No, she said. I made that mistake 2 years ago. The elevator doors opened with a polished chime. Everyone entered at once. Steel walls reflected strained faces from every angle. 22 became 21, then 20. Numbers descending in red light. Richard stood nearest the panel, jaw set, cufflinks bright under fluorescent glare. Naomi watched his reflection instead of the man himself. Powerful people often revealed more in mirrors than in direct light. Miss Brooks, he said without looking at her. What do you earn here, hourly? Naomi said nothing. Whatever it is, I can triple it by morning. Tara laughed softly. That is your move. Richard ignored her. You have no idea what boardrooms do to people who wander in uninvited. Naomi finally answered. Maybe they need more people who wander in. The elevator reached 17. Richard shifted to Lily. And you. Once this becomes public, every employer will search your name. They will see scandal, not courage. Lily's hands trembled for a second, then steadied. Then I will know who not to work for. Tara looked almost proud. At floor 15, the elevator jolted and stopped. The lights dimmed once, then returned. A soft alarm tone sounded overhead. Temporary hold, said the automated voice. Please remain calm. Richard exhaled sharply. Of course. Tara pressed the service override key. Nothing. She tried again. Nothing. Someone froze the car, she said. Naomi's stomach tightened. Richard's expression remained neutral, but he did not bother hiding satisfaction. Meetings start on time, he said. Votes happen. Markets open. Life moves on. The car felt smaller by the second. Lily looked close to panic again. Naomi touched her forearm gently. Look at me, she said. Lily did. Breathe in for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 4. They did it together once. Then again. Tara stepped onto a small maintenance panel, popped open the emergency access compartment, and reached inside with practiced hands. I dated an elevator technician for 6 months, she muttered. Mostly for noble reasons. A relay clicked. The car shuddered and resumed its descent. Richard stared at her. You are going to regret this. Tara smiled without warmth. Get in line. Floor 12. 11. 10. The doors opened on the executive level. Thick carpet. Walnut walls. A bronze sculpture no one understood, but everyone praised. At the end of the corridor stood double doors to the lounge where the board had gathered. Through the seam came the murmur of expensive impatience. Richard stepped ahead of them suddenly and blocked the path. "Enough theater," he said. "You do not enter that room through me." Naomi could feel the towel in her hands, the drive inside. The entire night balanced on something as small as courage. She looked at Richard's polished shoes, then at the tray stand beside the wall. "Excuse me, sir," she said in the same tone she used for rude guests. "Service coming through." Before he could react, she rolled the tray stand straight toward him. He stepped aside on instinct, more offended than threatened. Tara grabbed the moment, pushed open one of the double doors, and the sound of the boardroom flooded out. Arthur Bell sat at the head of the long table, silver glasses low on his nose. 10 other directors turned together. Coffee cups paused. Pens stopped. Screens glowed. Richard recovered instantly and strode in smiling. "My apologies," he announced. "Minor confusion with hotel staff." Naomi entered right behind him. Gasps were small but real. Lily came next. Arthur Bell removed his glasses entirely. "Richard," he said slowly, "why is your former compliance officer crying in my meeting?" Silence hit the room like a dropped curtain. Richard kept smiling, but it was thinner now. "Emotions are high before transactions, Arthur." "I am not emotional," Lily said, voice shaking only once. "I am prepared." She placed both palms on the table to steady herself. Naomi stepped beside the wall, still holding the folded towel. She could feel every eye on the uniform, the skin, the badge, the fact that someone like her was standing where people like her were meant only to serve coffee. One younger director whispered to another, not quietly enough. Arthur heard it. "If anyone in this room mistakes clothing for credibility," he said, "save us time and resign now." No one moved. Richard's face hardened by a fraction. Arthur gestured to Lily. "Speak." Lily opened her mouth, then froze. At the far side of the room, a legal advisor in Richard's camp lifted a stack of papers. "Before accusations begin," he said smoothly, "the merger vote can proceed under agenda rules." Several hands shifted toward voting tablets. Richard's shoulders eased. Naomi realized it in an instant. They were going to vote first, truth second. And the towel in her hands suddenly felt heavier than stone. Arthur Bell did not reach for his voting tablet. He simply watched the room the way old men who had survived many ambitious younger men often did. Around the table, directors hesitated with fingers hovering above glowing screens. The legal advisor adjusted his tie and tried again. Under Section 4 of the emergency agenda, a procedural vote may proceed before discussion. Richard Whitmore gave the faintest nod, already tasting escape. Naomi stood near the wall in a pressed server uniform, invisible by title and impossible to ignore by presence. The folded white towel rested across her hands like something ceremonial. Inside it, the flash drive seemed to carry its own temperature. Lily Carter's breath had become shallow again. Naomi could hear it from 6 feet away. Fear had returned now that the room was full of polished faces and expensive doubt. That was how power often worked. It did not need chains. It only needed witnesses willing to stay comfortable. Arthur looked to Lily. "Do you require a moment?" Lily swallowed and nodded once, ashamed of it. Richard seized the pause. "There you have it," he said gently, as if helping everyone through inconvenience. A distressed former employee, a confused hotel worker, and a misunderstanding inflated by nerves. Let us complete business and address personnel matters privately afterward. Several directors relaxed at the offer. Private was a beautiful word to people with stock options. Naomi felt anger rise, then settle into something steadier. She thought of her mother lining up medicine bottles under weak kitchen light. She thought of all the rooms where truth had been asked to wait until it became useless. Outside the lounge windows, rain had started again, tracing thin silver lines down the glass. The city beyond looked blurred, almost erased. Tara stood by the door with her arms folded, saying nothing but her posture made clear she was not leaving. Arthur tapped one finger on oak. "Proceed," he said at last. Richard's smile returned. Tablets lit brighter around the table. A soft electronic tone signaled voting mode. Naomi looked at Lily. The woman's hands shook openly now. Shame was cruel that way. It made innocent people feel like burdens. Naomi stepped forward before she could reconsider. Her shoes sank quietly into thick carpet. Every head turned. Richard's expression sharpened. "Sit down," he said automatically, forgetting for a moment she did not work for him. Naomi stopped beside the coffee service station. Steam curled from silver urns. The scent of dark roast and polished wood filled the room. "Sir," she said calmly, "I do not have a seat." A few eyes lowered. Arthur leaned back, interested again. Richard's jaw tightened. "This is not your place." Naomi looked around the table slowly. "With respect, sir, tonight this room keeps deciding places for other people." No one touched a tablet now. Even the legal advisor froze with his stylus in hand. Naomi placed the folded towel on the table directly in front of Arthur Bell. The white cloth looked almost luminous against dark wood. She did not open it yet. "I serve here," she said. "I refill cups, clear plates, and hear conversations people think do not matter because I am carrying a tray. I know the difference between a guest who is rude and a guest who is afraid." The woman in this room was afraid. Lily closed her eyes briefly, tears gathering but not falling. Naomi continued, "I also know the difference between confidence and hurry. Tonight, one man keeps asking you to move faster." Richard took a step forward. "Enough." Arthur lifted one hand without looking at him. Richard stopped. The old chairman's hand remained in the air for 2 seconds, thin and steady as law. Naomi unfolded one corner of the towel, then another. The room watched as if she were revealing evidence from another century. Inside lay the small black flash drive, plain plastic, no larger than a thumb. No gold, no prestige, just truth in cheap casing. Richard's face changed in a way no board member could miss. He did not speak. That silence spoke for him. Naomi slid the drive toward Arthur. "She was trying to protect it," Naomi said. "I was trying to protect her." Rain tapped harder on the windows. Somewhere deep in the building an elevator bell chimed, distant and ordinary, the kind of sound life makes while worlds shift. Arthur picked up the drive and weighed it in his palm. "Information?" he asked Lily. Lily nodded. Recorded calls, altered ledgers, deleted directives recovered from backup servers, and instructions sent from his office. Her voice strengthened with each word. "Including tonight." A murmur moved around the table like wind through dry leaves. One director lowered his tablet face down. Another removed his glasses. Richard found his voice at last. "Unauthorized materials. Illegally obtained. Irrelevant to the vote." Arthur looked at him for a long moment. "You seem very certain what is on it for a man who claims it is irrelevant." A few people actually smiled. Richard noticed and hated it. The legal advisor reached for procedure again. "Chairman Bell, we should consult counsel before delaying. Counsel can wait." Arthur handed the drive to the room's technology officer. "Display it." The officer plugged it into the central console with trembling hands. Monitors along the wall woke from their sleep, blue screens turning white. Richard moved fast toward the console, then stopped when every eye in the room followed him. Power was leaving him now, not in one dramatic collapse, but in tiny withdrawals of confidence. Naomi stepped back toward the wall where servers were expected to disappear. But no one forgot she was there. On the main screen, a folder opened. Audio files, spreadsheets, emails. One recording sat at the top, time-stamped 3 hours earlier. The officer looked to Arthur. Arthur nodded once. "Play the first one." Richard Whitmore closed his eyes for half a second, as if hearing thunder before anyone else could. The first recording began with the soft click of a door closing, followed by the hum of an office air vent and the unmistakable sound of Richard Whitmore's voice lowered into private confidence. "Move the vendor debt into Q3 and flag it as deferred. Exposure. The board only needs the headline number." No one in the lounge moved. The audio continued. Another voice, Lily's, smaller and tense, asked, "That is not accurate reporting." Richard answered with a dry chuckle. "Accuracy is timing, Lily. Learn the difference." The file ended after 14 seconds, but the silence afterward felt much longer. Rain streaked down the windows behind the board like ink running through paper. Arthur Bell did not blink. One director slowly removed his hand from the voting tablet, as if it had become hot. Another stared at Richard with open disbelief. The technology officer looked at the screen, then at Arthur, waiting for instruction. "Next file," Arthur said. Richard stepped forward sharply. "This is manipulated." Contextless clips from internal conversations. We are not turning a governance meeting into theater. His voice was strong, but it no longer filled the room the same way. Authority had volume when people believed it. Now it sounded like effort. The second recording played. This one was from earlier that evening. Glasses clinked faintly in the background. Richard's voice again, colder this time. If she hesitates, remind her the recommendation letter disappears. Fear is more reliable than loyalty. A male voice asked, and if she talks? Richard answered without pause. Then we say she was unstable and disgruntled. Several heads turned toward Lily at once. She did not lower her eyes. Naomi watched something subtle happen around the table. It was not outrage yet. It was rearrangement. Men and women who had once aligned themselves with power were now calculating distance from it. Richard saw it too. You all know how executive pressure sounds, he said quickly. Sharp language, yes. Criminal intent, no. Arthur folded his hands. Play the ledger files. Numbers filled the monitors. Columns of transfers, shell vendors, deferred liabilities, side letters hidden in attachments. The room became very still in a different way now. The way people become still when facts remove all room for storytelling. A finance director named Melissa Crane leaned forward until her pearl necklace touched the table. These reserve shifts. Bypassed audit review. Another member, Thomas Reed, adjusted his glasses twice. This vendor address is a mailbox in Delaware. That one too, Melissa said. And this one? Richard looked from face to face, searching for loyalty and finding arithmetic. Temporary structures, he said. Common in transition planning. Not without disclosure, Melissa replied. Her tone was flat, almost disappointed. The legal advisor who had pushed the vote earlier quietly closed his folder. No one noticed except Naomi. Cowardice often packed up before courage arrived. Arthur turned to Lily. Did you prepare these summaries? Yes, sir. Under instruction? Yes, sir. Did you object? Lily swallowed. Repeatedly. Arthur nodded once, then looked to Richard. Did you threaten retaliation if she reported concerns? Richard straightened his cufflinks, though they did not need straightening. I manage outcomes. Sensitive employees sometimes interpret urgency as threat. The sentence hung in the room and died there. Tara, still near the door, let out a single breath that sounded suspiciously like a laugh. Naomi kept her eyes on Richard. He was polished still, but polish was not the same as shine. He had become a man repeating expensive habits in a room that had moved on. Arthur reached for the tablet in front of him and disabled voting mode with one tap. The soft tone echoed like a verdict. This meeting is no longer about a merger, he said. It is about breach of fiduciary duty, false disclosure risk, witness intimidation, and whether this board has mistaken performance for leadership. No one interrupted. Richard's face reddened by a degree, then settled back to pale stone. Be careful, Arthur, he said quietly. You remove me tonight. Markets punish everyone at this table. Arthur leaned back in his chair. Markets recover from numbers. They do not recover from rot. Thomas Reed cleared his throat. I move for immediate suspension pending independent investigation. Melissa spoke before he finished. Seconded. Another voice joined. Then another. Hands rose one by one around the long table, not dramatic, almost casual, which somehow made it harsher. Richard looked at each hand, as if memorizing betrayal. Naomi noticed he did not look at her. Some defeats are easier when you can blame peers. Arthur did not raise his hand. He only counted. Motion carries. The words were gentle and absolute. Richard exhaled through his nose and turned toward the window where the city lights shimmered through rain. For the first time all night, he seemed older than his age. You think they will thank you for this? He asked Lily without facing her. Lily answered before fear could return. I did not do it for thanks. Richard then turned slowly toward Naomi. Their eyes met across polished wood and broken certainty. And you, he said. A waitress. Naomi's badge caught the light when she shifted. Tonight, she replied. That was enough. No one smiled broadly. This room was too disciplined for that. But several mouths softened. Arthur rose carefully from his chair, age visible now that the performance of meetings was over. Miss Brooks, he said, please remain after adjournment. Naomi felt every old instinct tell her that summons from powerful men usually meant trouble. Yet Arthur's gaze held none of Richard's hunger. Only gravity. Richard picked up his phone, found it disabled by corporate security, and set it back down with unusual care. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere beyond the river. Inside, the board secretary began drafting emergency minutes while Richard Whitmore stood beside the table he once controlled, looking like a guest who had stayed too long. The boardroom emptied in layers of quiet urgency. Directors gathered folders, whispered into phones, and avoided looking directly at Richard Whitmore as if eye contact itself might become evidence. Rain still tapped the windows, softer now, the storm already moving east. The city lights beyond the glass looked cleaner somehow. Naomi Brooks remained near the wall beside the untouched coffee station, hands folded in front of her, uniform still crisp despite the night that had tried to wrinkle everything. Lily Carter stood near the end of the table, breathing deeper than before, shoulders lowered for the first time since Naomi found her in the closet. Tara gave Naomi a small nod from the doorway and slipped out without needing credit. Some people understood timing better than applause. Arthur Bell waited until the last director left, then closed the heavy door himself. The click of the latch sounded more final than any vote. Richard was still by the window, phone useless in his hand, reflection doubled in the dark glass. Without the room orbiting him, he seemed less like a monument and more like a tired man in an expensive suit. Arthur walked slowly to the center of the table and rested both palms on the wood. "Miss Carter," he said, "outside counsel will need your statement tonight. Transportation and independent representation will be arranged at company expense." Lily blinked, almost unable to process kindness delivered in professional language. "Thank you, sir." Arthur turned to Naomi. "And Miss Brooks, I owe you an apology." Naomi looked genuinely surprised. "Sir." Arthur removed his glasses and polished them with a folded handkerchief. "When you entered this room, I noticed your uniform before I noticed your courage. That is a failure of eyesight no lenses can fix." Naomi did not answer right away. She had learned that sincere apologies often arrived awkwardly because truth rarely practiced beforehand. "You corrected it," she said at last. Arthur gave the faintest smile. "Late, but yes." Richard let out a dry breath near the window. "Touching," he said. No one turned immediately. He continued, voice low. "You all pretend morality discovered you tonight. Half this table knew I was aggressive. They only object now because I lost." Arthur faced him. "There is truth in that." Richard looked startled for the first time. Arthur continued, "Boards often reward what they later condemn. But accountability delayed is not accountability denied." Richard's gaze shifted to Naomi. "And what do you want?" he asked. "Money? Headlines? A promotion from carrying trays?" The old cruelty was there, but it sounded smaller now, like a song played in the wrong room. Naomi walked a few steps closer, stopping where the chandelier light reached the floor in a pale circle. "I wanted her safe," she said, nodding toward Lily. "I wanted them to hear her before they signed. Something they did not understand. That is all." Richard studied her face as if searching for a hidden angle. He found none. Men who live by transactions often distrust people who do not invoice their integrity. "You think this changes anything?" he asked. Naomi glanced around the boardroom. Voting tablets dark. Chairs empty. His authority gone. It already did. Silence followed. Not sharp now, but heavy and human. Lily approached Richard slowly, surprising everyone, perhaps even herself. She stopped 6 feet away. "I spent 2 years believing you were the smartest person in every room," she said. "Tonight, I learned you were just the loudest." Richard's jaw tightened, then loosened again. He looked tired enough to tell the truth and proud enough not to. Arthur checked his watch. "Security from the parent company will arrive in 10 minutes, he said. "I suggest dignity while there is still some available." Richard almost smiled at that. Almost. He placed his phone on the table and removed his company badge. The plastic rectangle made a soft sound against oak. No ceremony. No speech. Just an object losing meaning. He looked once more at Naomi. "You protected a stranger who could not help you." Naomi nodded. "Yes." "Why?" Rainwater traced one last line down the glass behind him. Naomi thought of her mother, of late buses, of people overlooked in every lobby in America. Because too many people only help when it benefits them. Richard lowered his eyes for a moment. It might have been shame. It might have been exhaustion. Sometimes they were the same coat. Arthur opened the door as 2 corporate investigators approached from the hall with folders and neutral expressions. Richard straightened instinctively. then seemed to realize posture no longer changed outcomes. He walked out without another word. The room exhaled after he was gone. Lily sat suddenly in the nearest chair and laughed once through tears she no longer hid. I thought I was going to faint. Naomi poured her a fresh glass of water from the silver pitcher and handed it over. You did not. Lily accepted it with both hands. Neither did you. Arthur gathered the scattered tablets into a neat stack. A habit from another era. Miss Brooks, he said, Sterling Grand can keep you if you wish, but Whitmore Dynamics has vacancies by sunrise. Ethics Committee, Internal Culture Task Force, or any office you choose to terrify. Naomi laughed softly for the first time all night. Sir, I am very good at breakfast service. Arthur's eyes warmed. Then perhaps begin there. Companies improve one honest person at a time. Outside, the rain had stopped completely. Somewhere below, in the hotel kitchens, plates were still being washed, ovens cooling, night staff finishing shifts no headline would mention. Naomi looked toward the window where the first break in the clouds revealed a slice of moon over the river, clean and silver, as if the sky itself had been waiting for the room to tell the truth. By 5:40 the next morning, the Sterling Grand Hotel was quieter than it had been all night. The chandeliers in the ballroom were dimmed to half glow, their crystals pale in the early light. Vacuum lines striped the carpets. Stacked chairs waited along the walls like disciplined witnesses. Down in the kitchen, breakfast service had begun with the familiar orchestra of clinking pans, printer tickets, and low voices that knew how to work before sunrise. Naomi Brooks tied her apron the way she always did, one knot, then a second smaller knot for luck. Her shift started at 6. Truth had shaken boardrooms overnight, but eggs still needed turning and coffee still needed pouring. She moved through the prep station with calm hands, loading silver pitchers, arranging fruit bowls, checking pastry trays. The steel counters reflected fluorescent light in long, clean bands. Nothing glamorous, nothing headline-worthy. Exactly the kind of place where real life kept going. Denise Harper entered carrying a tablet and 2 paper cups. I brought coffee, she said, and gossip disguised as business updates. Naomi accepted a cup. That sounds expensive. Denise leaned against the counter. Parent company announced interim leadership at 4:20 this morning. Trading delayed until they release a statement. Legal teams are multiplying in every hallway. Naomi sipped carefully. Strong. Bitter. Perfect. Again. And the hotel? Booked solid, Denise said. Scandal is excellent for conference traffic. Naomi laughed under her breath. Denise's expression softened. You all right? Naomi considered the question. Her feet ached. She had slept 43 minutes in the employee lounge with a folded towel under her head. Her mother had texted 3 heart emojis and 1 prayer hand icon at 2:11 a.m. The world was messy, uncertain, and strangely bright. I think so, she said. Denise nodded once. Good. Because Table 12 requested fresh orange juice, and justice does not cover Section B. Morning guests began filtering into the restaurant as dawn climbed the windows. Travelers in quarter zips. Attorneys pretending not to read news alerts. Couples discussing weather. Naomi carried coffee pots from table to table, smile easy, stride steady. Several televisions mounted above the bar played financial networks with captions about executive suspension and governance crisis. No one connected the waitress refilling creamers to the story scrolling below. Naomi preferred it that way. At 7:15, Arthur Bell entered alone wearing a navy overcoat and the look of a man who had not slept but had made peace with it. The hostess nearly tripped recognizing him from television. Naomi stepped forward before anyone else could. Good morning, sir. Arthur's lined face eased. Miss Brooks, I was hoping competence still worked here. Only until noon, she said. He almost smiled. She seated him by the east window where sunlight now spilled across white tablecloths in thin gold rectangles. What can I bring you? Black coffee, oatmeal, and 5 uninterrupted minutes. I can guarantee 2 of those. She returned with his order and set it down quietly. Arthur stirred the oatmeal once, then looked up. I have spent 30 years in rooms where people confuse complexity with wisdom, he said. Last night a woman with a coffee towel cut through all of it. Naomi adjusted the sugar caddy. Last night a lot of people finally listened. Arthur slid an envelope across the table. Heavy cream paper. Her name typed neatly. An offer, he said. Consulting role. Ethics review team. Better pay then. Breakfast service by an embarrassing margin. Naomi did not touch it yet. That is generous. It is practical. She glanced around the dining room. A busboy helping an elderly guest with a walker. A cook waving from the pass window. Denise arguing heroically with a broken printer. Familiar things. Necessary things. Can I think about it? Arthur nodded. Anyone worth hiring should. He lowered his voice. And for what it is worth, your mother's insulin will be covered regardless of your answer. Naomi stared. Sir, the company health foundation owed the city goodwill anyway. I simply redirected the mathematics. Her eyes warmed before she could stop them. Thank you. No, Arthur said gently. Thank you. Near the entrance, another figure hesitated just inside the doors. Lily Carter wore a simple gray coat. No makeup, no badge, no fear visible from across the room. She spotted Naomi and walked over carrying a small bakery box tied with string. I did not know what people who save strangers eat for breakfast, she said, placing it on the table. So I guess cinnamon rolls. Naomi laughed fully this time. That is an excellent moral instinct. Lily's gaze moved to Arthur. I gave my formal statement. Outside counsel says there will be more interviews. There will, Arthur said. But there will also be mornings after. Lily exhaled as if she had been holding that breath for years. Naomi opened the bakery box. Warm icing scent rose into the air. She tore one roll in half and handed pieces out without ceremony. 3 people stood by a sunlit window sharing breakfast while the